Welcome to Food Farmacy, where we assess food as medicine. I'm your host, Sarah Sloan, certified NTP, and this is my charming and funny co-host,
Uncertified Brian Adams.
Today we assess what is gluten and what is gluten-free. Let's talk a little bit about, as we do, the history of gluten. Well, I have a little bit of something up about the history from Google. The history of gluten is intertwined. Let's do a little story time.
Okay.
A little story time from Google.
Once upon a time.
Once upon a time from Google. Gluten's history is intertwined with the development of agricultural and bread making dating back from the Fertile Crescent around 10,000 years ago. While early humans consumed wild grains, hybridization and breeding led to wheat varieties with higher gluten content, which were easier to mill and process, making leavened bread possible. The term gluten itself, meaning glue, in Latin, reflects its role in binding dough. Modern understanding of gluten and its effects, particularly in relation to celiac disease, has evolved significantly over the past century, and key discoveries made in 1940s and beyond. That's one thing. I'm going to stop there because I like how the word gluten comes from the word glue, right? Which always gives me that connotation of like, and this is a nutritional therapist practitioner opinion of my own, and that is that when you eat gluten, obviously it acts like glue in the digestive tract.
Right.
And and it's sticky, right? And so other particles of food may stick on it. It may stick to the walls of your intestines. These are just my theories about gluten and how it does act like glue and how it could be sticky and how your intestines are, like they say, the size of a tennis court short ways. I'm pretty sure I'm right about that way. Like if you were to stretch out your intestines, I'm pretty sure they're the size of a tennis court short ways.
A tennis court?
Mm-hmm. Really? Yeah. You want me to fun fact you on that? I'm pretty sure I'm accurate.
That everyone's?
What is the length of your intestines? The length of intestines in a typical adult is about 26 feet. This includes small intestines and approximately 22 feet and the large intestine. Wait, so do you add those two up? The total length of the intestines is typically in an adult 26 feet. Oh, no. So it is about 26 feet. So how long is a tennis court both ways? Standard tennis court is 78 by 27. The width is 27. So short ways. If you were to throw out your intestines, it would be the length of a tennis court. Wow. Short ways. And so imagine you're eating, sticky.
So that's in my stomach right now, something that's
and it goes, as your intestines just go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth all the way down into your sphincter. Early cultivation and gluten contact. The practice of cultivating grains like wheat began 10,000 years ago in the Fertile Crescent, making a shift towards agricultural practices. Early wheat varieties contained gluten, but not as much as modern wheat. As humans developed hybridization techniques, they were able to produce wheat with greater amounts of gluten, making leavened bread possible. So obviously some of their reasonings for hybridization and creating more gluten in the bread was to make the bread leaven, which makes it taller, rise.
Okay.
Right? Mm. And they said it was easier to mill and process. The rise of gluten-free awareness. The term gluten-free gained prominence relatively recently, with the gluten-free trend becoming popular in the 21st century. This trend is linked to increased awareness of conditions like celiac and gluten sensitivity, as well as broader health and wellness trends. But this was the fact that I actually took note of, that I found interesting. Celiac disease, an autoimmune disorders triggered by gluten, has been recognized since the 2nd century AD, but the connection between gluten and its symptoms wasn't fully understood until 1940s. The 2nd century AD was January 1, 101. Wow. Year 101. So that's when celiac and autoimmune disorder triggered by gluten has been recognized. It was yes. But the connection with gluten and its symptoms wasn't fully understood until the 1940s. Medical advancements like the development of endoscopy and blood tests have improved the diagnosis and treatment of celiac disease, leading to greater understanding and condition of the role of gluten. That's the history of gluten, which I found a few things in there interesting. Mostly that they
101 AD,
yeah,
and they still allowed it to be this influential in our day-to-day lives, right? Is that the correct term?
Yeah, I suppose, yeah. And it does fascinate me that they were aware of celiac disease, and I wonder if they called it something else and not celiac disease like we call it.
A rabbit hole door open.
Right. And then furthermore, it was connected in the 1940s, which is still, 80 years ago. Right?
Close to 100 years.
That's still a long time.
Yes.
Which brings us to the facts about gluten. Gluten is a protein found in wheat, barley, and rye. And I'm going to talk to you about that in just a minute.
Because that's pretty much in everything.
Wheat, barley, and rye is pretty much in everything with the exception of rye.
Right.
But barley and barley is in beer. We don't eat a lot of barley grain, but we do eat people who drink beer or drinking barley and wheat. And then, of course, we know our big friend wheat is a huge, popular commodity here in America. So, gluten is a protein found in wheat, barley, and rye, and it's what gives bread and other baked goods their characteristics, texture, and shape. While many people can digest gluten without issue, others, like those with celiac disease, experience a harmful immune response to it. Additionally, some individuals may experience non-celiac gluten sensitivity, a condition where they feel unwell after consuming gluten, even without celiac disease, which, since I have been, I never got symptoms from wheat flour. I think, back in the day when I used to eat it. But since I call it clean, well, I don't eat wheat flour for the past 15 years. I don't eat any wheat flour at all. So I feel like since I have been clean, I actually have some sensitivity to it now. So after I eat it, if I'm at a restaurant, for example, and I'm unaware that maybe it's in like a sauce or something, and sometimes I'll be like, well, maybe it might be in this sauce, but I'll just, I really want the sauce, whatever, or something. And it's not really just, it's not bread, but it might be in some when you go to a restaurant, there's all kinds of wheat flour snuck into different things. It's in sauces, it's in bisques, it's in soups, it's in a lot of things that is not blatantly bread. Like you wouldn't think, why is there wheat flour in here? Well, it's a thickening agent, so they use it for so many things, right? So even if you go to a restaurant and you're trying to be clean, but yet you put a little sauce on something or whatever.
Trying to be gluten-free.
Correct. You try to be gluten-free. Thank you. You may find yourself eating something that has a little bit of gluten in it, wheat flour, whatever. And even gluten. Maybe it's got rye, maybe it's got barley. But our biggest candidate is wheat flour for gluten in America. And so I find sometimes my sensitivity is I get a runny nose. That's kind of my symptom, is I'll get a runny nose, and I know that I probably ate something in there. So that's the reason why I don't eat out a lot. Okay. While many people, we talked about that. Here's a more detailed look. What is gluten? Collective term, proteins, gliadin and glutenin. The proteins are found in wheat, barley, and rye, and they're related to grains. Why is important? It's crucial to baking, creates structure, elasticity in dough. So one of the things that I wanted to discuss is if you're gluten-free, sometimes if you go with ancient grains like in ancient barley, which does have gluten in it, and of course you consult your doctor. I'm not giving you advice if you have celiacs. I'm just saying that if you get an ancient grain that is a barley or a rye, maybe even, that is glutinous, it may not be as, effective or on you as wheat flour is. But that's something you can check into, and we'll get into more recommendations at the end of the show. which leads us to our symptoms. What are the symptoms of gluten? We discussed some of them, like celiacs, allergic reactions, and things like that. But Google says symptoms of gluten intolerance and celiac disease can vary, but often include digestive issues like bloating, gas, diarrhea, and constipation. Other symptoms can include fatigue, headaches, abdominal pain, and in some cases, weight loss, skin rashes, joint pain, and even neurological symptoms like brain and fog can also occur. Some of the, by the way, you can go to Google and you can read more about this, and I'm not going to touch up on every elaboration, which is digestive issues, fatigue, and mental fog. But one of them is skin problems. A lot of people don't relate or connect skin problems, and skin problems have become quite an epidemic in America. People get different, skin problems that are in what is the biggest issue with them is that a lot of times they're undiagnosable. You go to the doctor, what is this? We don't know. And so trying to remove gluten or even trying wheat flour for a couple weeks, it's not going to hurt you to remove it. You don't need it as an essential vitamin or daily part of your diet. So you could essentially try to sort of like what we call elimination diet. You could try to remove it.
It's the neurological for me.
The neurological, and we're gonna get into the recommendations. I don't want to jump too far ahead of ourselves, but this, right. Neurological. We'll touch up on that. In some cases, do I have that one? Yes, I do. In some cases,
these symptoms is not something that you would quickly identify.
Yeah. Well,
or relate to gluten.
Right. There is a book that is called, that it relates to neurological and wheat flour, and it is called Grain Brain. David Perlmutter, MD, is a board-certified neurologist. And that's a really good book. And there's another book called Wheat Belly. I recommend you read that one as well. William Davis, MD, he wrote the book Wheat Belly. Okay, so those are really good books that you can get your hands on, and you should read them if you're interested at all, or you have a family member or loved one that suffers from gluten intolerance or any kind of symptoms that you've heard us speak about. Where were we at? We were at symptoms, right? Okay, and another symptom is joint pain. A lot of people get joint pain and they don't make the connection that it could be gluten again. And like you said, other symptoms that are related to neurological problems are like headaches, nausea, depression, anxiety, weight loss, and can also be associated with gluten sensitivity or celiacs.
That's what I'm saying. Like, how could you make the connection or know how that's what you need? You need to change either your diet or you're actually consuming something that's giving you those type of symptoms.
Right. So if you've heard of any of those symptoms that you or a loved one is experiencing,
see what they eat.
Right. All disease starts in the gut, which is another show that you should look out for and watch. It'll be in our up and coming lineup of shows, which brings us to our last subject of recommendations. What are the recommendations if you experience celiac disease? Or
ask the Lord for help.
Well, the first thing I want to cover in the recommendation is, just like you said earlier, how do you know? How do you make the connection?
Right.
Well, the way you can make the connection to confirm whether or not you have celiac or a gluten insensitivity is you can get blood work done. You can go and get blood work done. They have various tests that they can run to determine and confirm if you are, in fact, celiac or have a gluten just intolerance.
And I recommend getting blood work done because besides trying to limit certain things that you have symptoms of, it will give you information on what you do have, right? Whether it's that or something else. And secondly, another way to actually prevent or cure is to do your research and eat better.
So the prick test, blood test, I was trying to find this website that my sister actually told me about, which is like Hair Strand. And that is
I wouldn't know nothing about it.
well, that is not, if they don't, it's not necessarily gluten-free targeted, but what they actually do is they take a hair, strand of your hair, you send it in, and they can tell
I wouldn't know
you,
nothing about it.
well, they can tell you what, I'm sure we can find a hair on your
That
body, we
topic,
just
I
might have to
I might
collect,
just have to stay out of that topic.
we just might have to collect a few extras, right? So, but they can check a strand of hair from your body, whether it be on your head or possibly somewhere else where you might have to get some hair from your beard. So, but they also, what they do is they identify what your foods, what your bio individual needs are in your diet. So they identify your bio individual needs for food that you should consume and food that you should stay away from.
Based on your DNA.
Based on your bio individual needs. Yeah, isn't that interesting? So that's aside from gluten testing. That's a whole nother type of testing, but it is kind of interesting to know that you can do that and you can see kind of, I don't know what the accuracy of these tests are, but I would imagine in today's world with DNA and all the things that they have and, hair strand testing, and they can see like your whole life in a strand of hair, which other recommendations would be, like we did discuss earlier, try removing bread, removing wheat flour, everything wheat flour.
Right, knowing better is doing better. You don't want to continue to do the same things that's causing you to have certain symptoms and illness and diseases, right?
It's not an essential, it's not an essential part of our diet. Even though we all grew up in, I guess in our era, being our age, that the bread was at the bottom of the pyramid. Remember the food pyramid?
What you meant by our age?
He's a lot older than me, so he's right. However,
exactly 1 year and 19 days.
So, but the food pyramid has changed. The food pyramid is no longer the way they taught us in school, where the bread's at the bottom and the biggest percentage of what we're supposed to eat. They've actually sort of I think they've renounced that and flipped it on its head, right? Where now the bread's the tiny part at the top, and we have our fruits and vegetables and protein at the bottom.
Okay.
So, try it. See how you feel, how you think. Read those books. They will also help you if you are suffering or need more answers about gluten or what is gluten or becoming gluten-free. And I want to encourage people that it seems like it's a challenge because wheat flour is in every part of our diet, no matter where we turn, where we go. There's a sandwich with bread, there's a pasta with wheat flour, there's a cracker with a cheese, there's everything there's fried foods, there's, it's just, the list goes on and on, where everything seems to be like, no matter where you turn, it's like an endless, sea of wheat flour when it comes to eliminating it completely. But I want to encourage you that we are creatures of habit, and eventually you will become that creature of habit that will actually source out the foods that without wheat flour, because you will feel better. It'll become a habit for you, and you will acquire a taste for that.
So guys, the next time your partner is feeling down, depressed, and sad, don't feel guilty. You didn't do anything. Probably just that gluten in them.
That's right. Maybe you should take that hamburger out of their hand and replace it with a salad. And what are some of the other recommendations I wrote down here? If you suspect
I got a recommendation.
Yes.
Become friends with an NTP. Find you an NTP. Network with an NTP. Socialize with an NTP.
Or just look for an NTP. Find an NTP that you can go see, and they can help you identify and guide you to the right foods, to the right cooking apparatuses, everything that will get you kind of on your way to, I guess, clean eating and gluten-free. Because it is sort of a challenge, and I understand that it's probably one of the biggest challenges in removing from your diet, other than corn syrup, and that is another show that you need to look out for and watch, where I discuss NSS, corn syrup. And that is, that's another thing I want to cover, is that gluten-free is a little bit of I consider it a little bit of a lingo, because I primarily don't eat wheat flour, right? So there is other grains that, such as, and I think I have it in my notes here, there's alternative grains, like ancient grains that have not been altered by man, such as kumat. That's Kumat. Now, I'm not a big fan of kumat, and it's probably an acquired taste, and I'm sure you can bake a lot of recipes with kumat. But and there are a lot of farmers in California that are starting to crop more kumat, which does have it is glutinous. But ancient grains that have been unaltered by man may contain gluten, but you may not have a sensitivity to it like wheat flour, because of the bioadversity that
Right.
that happened with that we discussed in our history topic. So the other alternatives, even non-gluten alternatives, like almond flour, tapioca flour, rice flour. There are so many alternative flours that if you are so inclined to bake your own bread, you could go and pick up these flours. They are available now these days. I would say 20 years ago it's probably pretty hard to find these things, but now today these alternative flours are available on Amazon, at the stores, and things like that.
Did you use any when you made the biscuits?
Yes, my biscuit recipe is almond flour and tapioca. And by the way, you can find my gluten-free recipes, which I don't talk a lot about on the show, but you can find my gluten-free recipes at Native Eats TikTok. And every recipe on there is holistic and gluten-free. And we have things like, I've got biscuits, breads, and all of those things that you kind of crave when you go gluten-free and you think that you have to actually eliminate all of those things. But really, you just need to modify it and get back to
ingredients.
Right. Get back to the way our ancestors ate.
Right.
Because, as I discussed in the show, our ancestors ate over 1,800 varieties of food, where we only eat 18 to 20 some varieties of food. So all of those grains that they had access to, alternative, like tapioca, that's actually a root, but it's a great flour.
I mean, granted, there's a lot of stuff that doesn't grow anymore.
Yeah, and that is a whole nother topic, is it?
There's stuff
That's
that
a
we're
sad.
not even aware that exists, that was coming off of trees.
Right, and that's why we're learning more today as Americans. More ancient grains that we've never heard of, right?
Right.
So there are some rescuable,
some
things like
soy.
kumat, like I just, there's a lot of different things. If you're an amaranth,
The soil was different.
if
then.
you're right, the soil was, and that's another show we will cover about soil. The soil was a lot different then and nutrient dense. So, but the idea is getting back to, in order to actually stimulate soil, is to get back to more varieties of cultivating and less pesticides, and that will stimulate our soils. And so, those are the recommendations I would say. Brian, do you have any recommendations if someone's going gluten-free?
They just don't do it. And it's simple. Research, right? Like Google or read before you actually purchase.
I have a question for you.
Yes.
You've been gluten-free now for about 2
2
months. How do you feel?
I feel different. I feel amazing. I feel it's weird, but I feel clean. I don't feel bloated. I don't feel like, even when I do eat and get full, it's a different type of full. It's a different, like, my stomach looks different. First of all, when I'm full, I used to be a lot more bloated, bigger, harder. Even after my food digests, I still had somewhat of a gut, right? That was not normal for my beautiful physique.
Physique.
So, I feel, to answer the question, I feel brand new. I feel amazing. I feel cured. I feel healthy. Like,
So you spoke about the bloating.
my shits are different.
You're pooping more
No,
regular?
no. I don't think you understand. Like, and I don't think, I'm not trying to be like gross or anything, but I don't think you understand that when someone such as me who just went through a recent transition, right? Not monitoring, but I noticed my shit.
What
is different.
transition did you go through? Let's just elaborate for our
So
listeners.
far as being gluten free.
Okay, a food transition.
Yeah, food transition,
Got it.
a diet transition.
Right.
Things that I
So
consume.
let me just make this clear to our listeners. Have you ever been gluten free before you went gluten free 2 months ago?
No.
Okay.
Not attentive.
I wanted to establish that.
No, not attentive.
I believe can lower the immunity and allow, and when you eat that every day and you're consuming it like that, and in my opinion, it's not really giving any real nutrients to the body, but yet it's converting to sugar and actually depleting the body.
Yeah, it's holding you back from regenerizing.
Right. So I truly, believe that it does lower the immunity, but so does a lot of things in America, which we will cover on the show. But I do believe that and that is a personal opinion. I want to put that out there. And that may be why you feel that way. Now, you have not only been gluten-free, but I will put this out there that you've also been totally clean and clean eating, no pesticides, you eat pretty much my diet, and I don't think you've ever gone completely clean like that. So there may be some other attributes, but definitely the wheat flour would contribute to more clear thinking, less bloating, more frequent bowel movements.
You know what I told you? I don't think that I completely finished what I wanted to say so far as my shits, but like there hasn't been a time where like I had a hard shit. And when I mean a hard shit, I mean like
Poop, yeah.
like a poop, like where it was, it hurted, it was dry, it was whatever the case.
So constipation.
My poop, yeah, constipation, pretty much.
You haven't been
my
constipated.
poop now is so, like, first of all, it seems like it's on a schedule, right? Like every morning, if I want to, I can sit on the toilet and just poop. If I don't feel like I have to, like I know if I want to, I could, right? Or most of the times I feel like, okay, good, I have to, go poop, but like it comes out of me now, like it's no problem.
And
like,
let's just clarify, this occurred after.
right.
And I think it maybe took when I did your food and mood journal and we looked at your functioning and how your body was functioning after you went clean and gluten-free and all
Right.
of these things. I think it did take it wasn't long, but it took about a week for you to get regular. And I want to point out that before he wasn't using the bathroom, but how many times a week?
Probably once or twice a week.
Which I had to let him know that is not normal. At his age, that's not normal at all at anyone's age. And now,
Realistically, like no more than 3 times a week, probably.
but you're not alone.
Right.
Like, that's not unusual that as an NTP, you will hear that people think it's often regular that they don't use the potty that
Right.
often.
I've been doing that so long, I didn't know that it was normal to actually take a poop every day. Like that was natural for your body to go through that
Right.
process every day.
Right, and I'm going to end the discussion there only because we do have a poop show, and I don't want to get down that sewer.
Right, but
I don't
to-
want to get down that.
to answer her
I don't want to get
question,
go down that sewer
I feel
hole.
great. I feel cured. I feel like she saved my life. There's a totally difference in my energy, my thinking,
Wow.
my body,
Wow.
from a visual standpoint, and even like just feeling it inside. Like that's why sometimes it's hard to explain. Like I feel cured. I feel blessed. I feel like my life was saved. Like
Where's the clock? Thank you.
it's amazing.
That is a huge reason why he's here on this show. Not just because he's charming and funny, but he's
sexy.
an
So
actual
sexy.
client, and he has experienced what it is like to see an NTP, a nutritional therapy practitioner, and to go to food as your answer. And make sure you watch our next show where we assess chickens. What's the difference between pastured, cage-free, and free-range? This show is sponsored by localfooddirect.com, where you can finally find quality local farm products that ship for free direct from the farm to your door.
If you're a farmer or a producer of quality local products in the U.S. that would meet the localfooddirect.com standard, go to localfooddirect.com. Join the local food revolution.
Sign up now during the launch special and receive 2 months free.
Let's get back to our roots and all have access to quality local foods again, like our ancestors did.
Use the code FOODPharmacy and receive an extra month free. That's right, 3 months free when you use the code FOODPharmacy.
That's 2 F's, as in food and farm.
Go to localfooddirect.com.